From sexy sports cars to sensible saloons, we Brits can be proud of our motoring heritage.
Beautiful, very British.
What a great-looking car.
And for a small nation, we've produced some of the most incredible motors ever to hit the tarmac.
You can't say it's not a fantastically well-made and designed car.
Some so beautiful they could make a grown man cry.
Lovely motor that was. I wouldn't mind one now, actually.
Others that, well, just make you want to cry.
My dad used to make me go-karts that were safer than that thing.
It's like putting the space shuttle engine in a milk float.
Whether they were a roaring success or a disaster on wheels, these are the cars that made Britain great. Tonight, we're shopping at the exclusive end of the market as we go in search of the quintessential, flashy British car.
Beautiful design. Wonderful car.
I mean, it really is another showstopper.
Very, very cool. Very, very collectible.
What qualifies as a flash motor is a complicated equation. It has to look good enough to stop people in their tracks.
I remember going, wow.
We're talking luxurious, slick, usually expensive.
I think they were the pinnacle of what British luxury was.
Of course, a flash car means very different things to different people.
You might say it's flashy and I might say it's stylish.
So we'll be looking at a whole variety of Swish motors to cater for all tastes. Flash cars for the wealthy gent with a sideline in saving the world.
Yes, please, a DB5 and Bond. Marriage made in heaven.
Something for you old-school rakish charmers.
I do like the Austin Healey. You feel like just stopping by women and going, hello.
And newly minted city high flyers.
Notice the spray. What a lovely car that was.
From the roguish man about town.
Stag. I've got a stag, mate.
Sports car mad dads on a budget.
Daddy had an MGB. Oh, yeah.
And the ultimate set of wheels for celebrities, big bosses, and, drifters.
We took a Rolls Royce. It's one of the hardest cars in the world to make drift.
But let's face it, a flash car's got to have a bit of zip to it. So our drive into the flashy fast lane starts with the big Healeys, the legendary road racers that set the bar for British sports cars back in the 1950s.
Beautiful shape, lovely two-seater, windscreen that could be folded flat on the bonnet so that you could really get not just wind in the hair motoring, but sort of flies in the teeth motoring.
Designed by the great Donald Healey specifically with speed in mind, the Austin Healey 100 was even named because, you know, it went 100 miles an hour. Seriously speedy for a car at that time. First released in 1953, the 100 later morphed into the powerful 3000. We've got someone with some impeccable racing credentials to take one of those beauties out for a spin.
Now, I'm told there's an Austin Healey 3-litre behind this door here, which I'm itching to have a look at. Oh, wow. Hello. Oh. That has got such lovely proportions and is so pretty yet muscular, and the wire wheels are fantastic. It just kind of says, drive me, which I shall right now. Health and safety, no seat belts. OK, off we go, please, kids. We are ready. Find them, grind them. This is the trouble, I'm actually about a foot too short for this car because my foot doesn't quite go all the way down to the clutch. I'm immediately transported back into the 1960s, even though I wasn't around back then, but it gives you a real sense of excitement about that time.
Your
MC motorcars have been held to a standard that makes their builders, designers, owners into proud men.
Beginning production in 1959, the rollout of the 3000 coincided nicely with the opening of the M1, a perfect testing ground for its roaring power.
The thing about the big Healys, the big Austin Healys, the 3 litre back then, was just that. It was a 3 litre. It was a thumping, hulking, great big engine underneath the bonnet of a gorgeous-looking car.
It has a few downsides. I mean, that cockpit is incredibly hot. You've got a lot of engine heat coming out of it. You know, it's sort of, the seats are sort of thin, and you're only about this high off the ground, so it's not exactly comfortable. But it's the kind of car you can lose yourself in driving.
You can imagine sort of getting into it and racing down to get your Sunday papers on a beautiful spring morning, and you'd be in that car and you'd get the papers and drive back, and the world would be great. There's nothing more beautiful than that.
I bet you would feel the bee's knees in the 60s driving this, because people would just be stopping and staring. You know, it was not a mundane car, it wasn't a saloon car, it wasn't a family car. It was something that was a bit racy, a bit sexy. Now, this big Healy did manage to hit 60 miles an hour in just under 10 seconds, which was pretty good going for a car back then. Wow, I'm picking up some speed now. It really is rattling around a bit underneath me. I can feel sort of each wheel and each corner just moving around, something that you don't really feel with a modern day car. It's much more together and the suspension feels much tighter. But it's what a glorious feeling it's giving me. I love it.
Okay, so it may rattle a bit now, but back then the big Healys were famous for their pace and performance. Donald, a rally champion himself, broke a whole sheaf of records on the salt flats of Utah in 1953, as the Austin Healey 100 proved to be the fastest production car in the world.
The finish flag put us in a great new record.
And, at a cost of around £1,300, it was billed as the cheapest 100-mile-per-hour car on the market too.
It was one of the rare instances of a British car being right first time, and, you know, Americans loved it. I mean, we were shipping 80% of them made were sold in the States.
I think this car is more like the DB5's sort of younger cousin. It's a bit like, I don't know, it's not quite James Bond, it's more sort of a David Niven character who's very much a gentleman but got that real naughty little twinkle in his eye.
They used to call it the hairy-chested sports car in the early 1960s, so it had a bit of a sort of He-Man image.
You feel like a cad, I think that's the word I'd use for it. You just feel a bit raffish. You feel like just stopping by women and going, hello.
If it goes past, people say, oh, that's beautiful.
This car is so much fun. Fun. I love it. It's a hoot.
The Austin Healey is a truly British flash car. Great looks, plenty of power, and some pulling power too.
After you, sir. My pleasure. Have a lovely day.
Flashy yet friendly. It's a motor that inspires smiles and waves wherever it goes.
If this car was human, it's the kind of person that I would love to spend an evening in the pub with. Just to have a good old natter, chew the cud, hear some tales, and have a giggle.
Coming up, the big Healey has big competition from possibly the most famous set of wheels in the world.
The DB5, absolutely beautiful.
And the flash car for the flash man about town.
Triumph Stag. Oh, lovely motor that was. I wouldn't mind one now, actually.
Welcome back to the cars that made Britain great. This week we're gazing adoringly at the exquisite, the exclusive and the expensive as we seek out the ultimate flashy British motor. Before the break, those rakish Healys set our pulses racing in their bid to be crowned the flashiest British motor of all time. But if you had serious money to burn, surely you'd have to consider an iconic mark of British motoring. A brand with the royal seal of approval from two future kings. A name synonymous with excellence. luxury and glamour. Aston Martin. Oh, is he nicking that badge?
The DB5, absolutely beautiful. I mean, it really is another showstopper.
Of course, it's the car that everybody loves, isn't it? In fact, I saw one recently, and I stood there for 10, 15 minutes just staring at it. I mean, it's a piece of art, the DB5.
OK, so it might have been designed by Italian coach builders, Carrozzeria Touring, but the DB5 is as British as they come. A subtly flash car for the gentleman who only wanted to show off a little bit.
It's got just enough character to make you want to be its friend, and yet it's got enough aggression for you to know that it's going to drive really well.
One of the things that is great about it, I notice, in driving them, is that they drive rather well, and they drive more like an early 70s car. There's a lot of 60s cars really drive the same as a 1950s car, but those Astons don't.
I think when the DB5 came out in the 60s, there was a time when people were sort of beginning to appreciate great cars made in Britain. We had the Jaguar E-Type around that time as well.
The E-Type, like the DB5, was an iconic car of the decade. But while the Jag was the flash motor for the carefree playboy out for a good time, the Aston's more refined image was reflected in the cost. At over £4,000. That's over 80 grand in today's money. It was twice the price of its sexy competitor.
When I used to see one of them, it was like, you know, it's a different league, basically, to E-Type Jag. You know, when you see a car like that, you think, that's it, you know, you got that. It makes you want to own one, and it doesn't matter what age you are, I think you're never going to fall out of love with an Aston Martin.
The DB5 was luxurious. It came equipped with electric windows, wool-pile carpet, leather trim, and the obligatory chrome wire wheels. Yet, gorgeous as it is, it's not too dissimilar to the other great Astons of the era.
All of them, when you look back to the, you know, the DB2s, 3s, 4s, all of them, every one of them was really pretty.
So what is it that makes the DB5 stand out? Why, Mr. Bond, I've been expecting you.
It's probably one of the best product placements of all time. In fact, they probably brought in product placements in films in general, because if anyone says, what's James Bond's car? And Aston Martin, name something with Aston Martin, James Bond. So they both work for each other.
There's a famous photo of Sean Connery. He's sort of leaning up against the DB5, and you do sort of sit there and think, you know, which one would you look at first?
Yes, please, the DB5 and Bond. Marriage made in heaven.
It's almost a bit of a cliche, the DB5, because it is just, you know, it's a boy's wet dream, really, because it's James Bond, and it looked great, and it was silver, and it had all these gadgets.
Thanks, Dom. Yes, on its debut in 1964's Goldfinger, the DB5 showcased a fabulous arsenal of sophisticated secret agent weaponry.
It's that power of Bond that turned it into this iconic fighting machine with guns that came out of lights.
The rotating number plate. Just thinking, oh, this is amazing.
And at the back as well, the bulletproof shade.
They all had sort of buttons, didn't they, to get the oil out the back.
A little bit of oil spillage, boom.
Machine guns.
Why do cars not come with machine guns? They do in Beirut.
But for most of us, one gadget has just a little more oomph than the rest.
Ejector seats.
Definitely the ejector seat.
You just see the guy go flying out.
It's arguably the most famous Bond gadget in the greatest Bond car, but this legendary scene, aided by an urgent climactic soundtrack, was all about suspense. From the moment Q mentioned the device, audiences were desperate for Bond to deliver the dramatic payoff.
I've had a few passengers that I would have liked to have had that red button for. Bye!
You know, the mother-in-law, the boring friend, the hitchhiker, bang, hit the ejector seat, they're gone.
See you, love.
Good old Aston DB5. Ooh.
We all love the idea of this character that represents the very Britishness of British and you know, saving the world, but doing it in style with a nice tailor and a beautiful car. I could buy into that.
the Bond link makes this car the flash choice for any wannabe international spy stroke suave ladies man, but it requires a healthy bank balance. To buy one today will set you back over £500,000. That is, unless you want one that Bond's actual bum has sat in which case you're going to need much deeper pockets.
£2.6 million I have now.
Yep, £2.6 million at a London auction in 2010 for a car that, incredibly, Aston Martin once sold on as just another second-hand vehicle.
I'm selling the car. No!
You can't get much more flash than probably the most famous car ever made. We might all dream about owning a DB5, but as only about 1,000 were produced, and they cost a bomb, most of us will have to dream on. That's the thing about the flashiest of the flash. They are often unbelievably expensive.
I mean, some of the prices of these cars are absolutely shocking. We've entered an era now where the best cars from back in the day have become collector's items. People don't drive them, they collect them, and I'm deeply suspicious of people that collect cars. Deeply suspicious.
So, if Aston Martins are beyond your budget, what has Britain offered in terms of a flashy car that doesn't need a second mortgage? Perhaps character is the key.
In the 1950s, General Motors employed poets from Oxford and things to think up names for cars. Thus they got, Stingray, Eldorado, Mustang, horse. Great romantic names.
Yes, names can be very important. For example, this is a Reliant Kitten. And this is a Mercury Cougar. This is a Corbin Sparrow. And this is a Pontiac Firebird. And this is a Hyundai Pony. Enough said there. And this, proving that it's not only Americans who can come up with great car names, is our next flashy motor. A British beast of a car. The Triumph Stag.
You only need to say the word stag. It's got to have about 3 A's in it. Stag. I've got a stag, mate. It's good, isn't it?
The stag standing there, confident, elegant, like a painting. We've never had the Ford Ferret, have we? Or the Vauxhall Chicken.
Well, not yet. The Stag was originally Triumph's code name for the project, but, unsurprisingly, no one could think of anything better, so the name stuck. Stag.
The Triumph Stag was designed by the man you wanted to have design your car, Michelotti. This was a guy who was just throwing Ferraris out. There's another Ferrari, there's another Ferrari, I'll draw another one for you. He was the man of his time, and he got it right with the Stag.
Great thing about the Stag was it was that perfect combination which we've seen in the British car industry many times. Italian designed body shell, British engineering. Personally, that front end, that notched out, peaky-eyed visor front end, I think is so timeless.
Lovely sort of symmetry to them, with the soft top back, and they had that sort of T-bar thing, didn't they, in the middle.
The Stag was like a man about town, cad, boy done good car.
Costing around £2,000 in 1970, that's the thick end of 30 grand today, the Stag was aspirational without being unreachable.
An affordable dream car, a sense of Saint-Tropez, a sense of Monaco, Monte Carlo, but for everyone.
Advertising at the time played up its upper crust credentials, but in truth, this was class with a rough edge, a flash car for a lovable rogue.
I remember my dad's flash mates coming round. I think one of them was called Ron, and he had a Triumph Stag. And Ron had a sort of like leather jacket. He thought Ron was a bit cool as well, and had sort of sovereigns. Bit of a geezer, I can remember he'd always park it and then get out and then sort of lock it and then sort of like walk up the drive like that. But he'd always then sort of look back at it. And, yeah, that's nice.
I think, actually, Stag drivers became BMW drivers. Arms out the window, tight sleeve T-shirt, big men, 3-litre V8 engine, cool-looking, thuggish car.
Harry Webster, Triumph's design chief, once said that the Stag was pitched at the young executive who wanted something different, something sporty, but with creature comforts.
It was a 4-seat, convertible, with a safety bar that no one had thought of. What it meant was, if you'd been brought up on sports cars and then you suddenly had children, you didn't have to sell your sports car, because children would fit in the back of it. And that's what made the Stag really special.
The Stag is a man's car, and that man happens to have 2 kids and a wife as well. Good lad.
So we're all agreed. A flash car, potentially affordable and British. Perfect! So why did it become known as the Triumph Snag?
Triumph Stag, lovely, but massive problems. When it came off the production line, they used to overheat, and the engines would literally seize up, or the head gasket would go, or the head would warp, because they had a huge problem with the cooling of it.
The Stag did experience production issues during its 4-year development, although Triumph tried their best to convince us all bases were covered.
Mechanical faults are traced to the source, even if this means dismantling right down to the last nut and bolt. This is quality control with a vengeance.
The V8 was made by pretty much just sellotaping 2 Dolomite engines together. It didn't quite work.
What people did is they realised that when you buy a Stag, you're going to have heating problems, cooling problems with the engine. So what you do is you take the engine out and you put in a Rover 3.5 V8.
If that car had come out with the Rover 3.5 V8, it would have been unbelievably good.
British Leyland never quite had the cash to put the Stag right, and only around 25,000 were sold during its 7-year run. Since then, though, it's become a stone-cold classic.
Triumph Stag. Oh,
I love them. I think they're a good-looking car, and I would like one.
lovely motor that was. I wouldn't mind one now, actually.
Very, very cool, very, very collectible now.
I think that's a car, if you want to invest in something and make a good return right now, Triumph Stag.
But if the Stag was aimed at being a flash car for the people, in the 1970s it had a formidable rival. After the break, our search for the ultimate British flash motor leads us to the affordable dream car that sold in the hundreds of thousands. Plus, a car of many talents.
This car was amazing. It went underwater.
Has the cars that made Britain great inspired you to become the proud owner of your very own British-designed car? Well, with a chance to win a brand new UK-engineered MG3 3-time, that dream could be about to come true. Put your stamp on the design with a choice of non-metallic colour, and with your first registration and 12 months road tax all covered, you'll be ready to hit the road the moment it arrives at your door. For the chance to get your hands on this great British runaround, simply text CAR to 65515 or call 090 416 12555 or post your name and phone number to CAR, PO Box 7557, Derby, DE1, 0NP. Entrance must be 18 or over. Texts cost £1.50 plus one message at your standard network rate. Calls cost £1.50 plus your network access charge. Lines close on the dates shown on screen. 3 days later for postal entry. For rules, go to channel5.com/win. Welcome back to the cars that made Britain great. This week we're luxuriating in the famed, the fantasy and the flash. Those exclusive dream cars that we've all owned at one time or another, probably in matchbox form. Before the break, we locked horns with the Stag, the affordable flash car for the rakish man about town. But even that was hardly cheap. Luckily, there was a car to rival it from the same era that cost half as much.
I think the MGB was a classic British sports car. It was a reasonably accessible roadster, and it did have a cool image.
The MGA had been a successful sports car for MG in the late 1950s, but its replacement, the MGB, was a phenomenon. Over a remarkable 18-year production run, its many variants made dreams come true for over 500,000 happy buyers.
It was a fairly basic car, 4-cylinder engine, 4-speed gearbox and so on, but just a really, really nice package of good-looking styling and very good drivetrain. It was the sort of car you could buy and you could have just unalloyed fun with it.
Reliable, sporty and fun. But what really helped the MGB's popularity was cost. At launch in 1962, it was priced at around £700, around 13 grand in today's money. It was an affordable dream, perhaps an acceptable purchase for a mild midlife crisis. They do seem to have been popular with dads.
The MGB is a little bit of a favourite of mine because my dad had one for many, many years and he was an enthusiast. He adored that car, more than he did his kids probably, and he did love us. He was out there. He even had a leather jacket, flying jacket with MGB emblem on there. He's in the owners' club. He used to polish that car.
Daddy had an MGB. Oh, yeah, and it was a golden brown. Yeah, another shade of brown. Just a light brown, this one.
My grandfather drove several MGBs. He was a tax inspector. He was a very conservative man, but he loved the MGB.
I loved it because Dad might have only been going 50 miles an hour, but to me he was doing 150. That's what he probably told me as well. Yeah, cunning.
I remember driving around and he would tell me about the steering and he would be very proud about the interior cabin.
The smell, oil, petrol, occasionally rubber.
The MGB, I think, made him feel a bit sexy. It made him feel a bit sporty. So it's important that you've got cars like the MGB that are accessible. Yes, it was expensive, but it wasn't beyond the realms of reach and beyond the realms of possibility.
It's the kind of car you can actually buy now and you can still be enjoying it in 25 years' time after having spent thousands and thousands keeping it going. But, you know, that's the fun of classics.
Passion for the MGB remains undimmed, and many of these beloved British beauties remain active as they move into old age, thanks to a dedicated owners' club, of which Chris Pollard here is a member.
This is my pride and joy, my MGB Roadster race car, most of which was built in 1972.
That's right. During the week, Chris is a quiet, mild-mannered physicist. But at the weekends, he transforms into a magnificent MGB racing marvel, setting lap records on tracks across the country. Those not aware of the MGB's racing heritage are often taken aback.
I expect pipe and slippers and flat cap, and they get a bit surprised when it turns in a time that wouldn't disgrace a car that was built last year. Part of the fun, actually, is the surprise factor.
Chris is going to demonstrate his skill and the pace of his MGB on a public track day, meaning the competition on the circuit will be a mixed bag of Caterhams, the odd MX-5, and of course, a Clio with a roof rack. Va-va-voom.
Keep an eagle eye open for fast traffic coming through on the start-finish straight.
Chris uses his MGB for racing, but the engine is basically standard for a B-series model from '72. It's quick, and it's noisy. You can see why it's delighted drivers for so many years.
Late turn in. Late apex.
The MGB has always been a good racer, with its blend of speed and toughness making it a natural in endurance races. It fared well on track both at Sebring and Le Mans in the 1960s, as well as claiming a class win in the 1964 Monte Carlo Rally.
For years, the MGB was, you know, the world's best-selling sports car. But, you know, we were still shipping boatloads of these things over to California in the late 1970s when it really was a very old car. But still, it was one of the few fun, affordable two-seaters you could buy.
Still look good. Back to the trailer. Car's handling well. Tyres are really hot. You can smell them.
What a ride. A speedy demonstration of just why the MGB is so adored and why it became the flash car for the masses. Or at least a typical dad who just wants to feel cool. From the 1960s, though, all British flash cars had intimidating competition from a supercar that has had petrol heads drooling for decades.
I owned my dream car. How great is that? Porsche 911, the 911. I just think it is one of the most beautiful rear-engine supercars that is still on the road today. Now, some might argue that the shape hasn't changed in decades, but for me, that's the beauty of it.
I bought my first 911 Porsche when I was 19, but I couldn't insure it in Ireland. Nobody. They didn't even give me a quote. They just said no. That was it. So I was like, all right, cool. What am I going to do? Move to England. That's pretty much why I live in the UK now.
But we reserved British types sometimes have an uneasy relationship with anything this flash. Yes, owning a Porsche has its downsides.
It is everyone's dream Porsche. It was beautiful. It did drive really nicely, but every time I stop at a traffic light, you'd look over and there's just this total wanker in a Porsche going, what? And then you'd realise it was a shop window and it was you. Like, it was awful.
Didn't own a house, had a nice Porsche. Got spat on, got pulled out on, car got keyed.
People either hated you justifiably for driving around in a Porsche, or people liked you because they were Porsche drivers as well. Do you want to play some golf? No, I don't. Go away.
Anyway, who needs Porsches when Britain has its very own supercar?
Lotus Esprit, what a lovely car that was. Only two, I think it was a 2.2 engine or something. Didn't have hardly any engine in it, but light as a feather and just absolutely rocketed.
The Lotus Esprit came out of the Geneva Motor Show as a concept in '73, and the same shape-ish lasted until the millennium. That is an amazing production run.
Looking like a space-age doorstop on wheels, the Giorgetto Giorgiario designed Esprit was a dramatic departure from the more classic shape of the Lotus Elan. It was a properly flashy car, perhaps for the young entrepreneur, or a kind of 1970s yuppie who liked speed. Lotus claimed it could do 0 to 60 in under 7 seconds.
The Esprit, to me, is without a doubt the best-looking British sports car. I mean, it epitomises what a sports car is. It's just a damn wedge. It's going to cut through the air, no worries. And when Gregario designed the thing, he would have had a piece of A4 paper and somebody leaning over him saying, look, just shut up and draw a design. He had a millimetre of lead left. There you go, there's a wedge, make that. And that's what they did.
I think the coolest thing for me, as sad as it is the lights, how they just flop up. Because I remember there was a guy down the street from us who used to have one, and he'd flash you to go, and every now and then he'd just like that, and it was brilliant. Brilliant. Simplest things.
I absolutely love it because it's so damn simple.
On the outside, then, the Esprit S1 gloried in its sharp, clean lines. So perhaps it was that stark simplicity that convinced Lotus designers that they could properly go to town on its eye-watering interior.
The interior of the S1 is beautiful. It's one of the few occasions where a concept car's interior has made it into production. It's kind of like this amazingly vibrant green colour with kind of orange and green tartan inserts in the seats.
So if you dug the daring decor, worshipped the wedge shape and had a healthy bank balance, the Esprit was perhaps the perfect sports car for you. Except...
Beautiful design, wonderful car, but it kept breaking down. I had a mate who had one and I was playing around with perhaps trying to get a second-hand one when they come down in price, but you found out there were very few garages could actually do anything about the car.
I think it got very hot in it, because the window only sort of opened that much and it sort of broke down quite a lot.
And just because everybody says it's loads of trouble, usually serious, I don't care. They did break down a lot, but they were always great to drive.
But we can't talk about the Esprit without mentioning its most famous driver.
The Prime Minister is soon at the wheel of a 155-mile-an-hour turbo Esprit.
No, not you, Maggie.
Well, the most famous one, because I was a bit of a fan of Roger Moore. He's my favourite Bond in a funny sort of way. And he had the White Lotus, of course, didn't he, that went swimming. I mean, that would always stay in my memory.
Yes, when Lotus PR man Don McLaughlin heard about plans for The Spy Who Loved Me, he quickly put legendary Bond producer Cubby Broccoli in his sights.
He drove the Lotus to Cubby Broccoli's production office, to the front of the production office, and got Cubby to come out and went, you have to have this car in your movie.
Cubby snapped it up, and the Esprit found itself at the centre of some of the most memorable sequences in the 007 canon.
It looks fantastic as well when it's driving around those mountain roads and the helicopter chase sequence. It looks amazing, so dynamic and so capable and low and agile.
You ever get the feeling somebody doesn't like you?
And apparently the production removed the bulbs from the rear brake lights because they wanted to show Bond not braking for corners. He was a hero. He wasn't frightened. He'd get that car around there without using the brakes.
This car was amazing. It went underwater.
Yes, not only could the Esprit travel at pace on land, it could also swim.
When I first saw that, it was like, that is the coolest thing I have ever seen in my life.
Echoing Honey Rider's famous entrance in Dr. No, the Esprit drives up onto the beach, apparently roadworthy, but was in fact hauled out of the water on a set of submerged tracks.
That was an iconic car, Roger Moore, going into the sea and then winding down the window and getting a fish out, and then threw the fish out and sort of went, and, to some lady in a bikini.
So maybe the Esprit is the ultimate flash car to have been made on our shores. Perfect for globe-trotting secret agents and, as an added bonus, marine biologists. But join us after the break when the ultimate British luxury brand raises the flashy car stakes even higher.
They said at the end of the day, we're driving a Rolls Royce. That's big in the game.
Don't forget you can still win your very own British designed and engineered car, the brand new MG33 Type, with your choice of non-metallic colours, first registration and 12 months road tax all covered. It's a great British ride. To enter, text CAR to 65515 or call 090 416 12555. Post your name and phone number to CAR PO Box 7557 Derby DE10MP. Entrance must be 18 or over, and for rules go to channel5.com/win. Welcome back to the cars that made Britain great. This week we've been on the trail of the flashiest, coolest cars Britain has produced. We've run the gamut from dream motors for geezers to A-list cars for well-off British gents. But now it's time for the ultimate flash brand, the luxury British name adored by the super rich and held in awe across the world.
Growing up, definitely the dream car was a Rolls-Royce.
I think they were the pinnacle of what British luxury was.
It oozed money, it oozed fame, it oozed class, it oozed everything that you thought you were never going to be. Well, I didn't anyway.
Yes, Rolls-Royce truly is the Rolls-Royce of British car manufacturing, even if it is now owned by BMW. When Charles Rolls and Henry Royce formed their partnership in 1904, the aim was to produce the best motor car in the world, regardless of cost. By the middle of the century, their legacy was assured, with their luxurious cars owned by those who demanded exquisite style and comfort.
If you were rich, you would think nothing of driving round in a Rolls-Royce. And people liked this. It was great to be a successful entrepreneur, and the Rolls was that kind of talisman of being, you know, a hard-working British boss.
When I did The Apprentice, I didn't know what, you know, Lord Sugar drove, but he came to one of our first meetings and got out of the Rolls-Royce, and I just remember just thinking, big respect.
Ironically, the Lamborghini's all right because you're a footballer and a sportsman. Unless you're a championship-winning footballer and sportsman, then the Rolls-Royce is almost like that symbol of ultimate success, you know?
To drive a roller projects an image of achievement and affluence. It's become the ultimate celebrity accessory, whether you're a music mogul or the greatest ski jumper Britain's ever seen. Hi, Eddie. Although, who knows what Sir Henry Royce might have made of John Lennon's Phantom after its psychedelic customisation. Far out.
You know, John Lennon had one, Rod Stewart had one. Elton John cruised around in a convertible one in the Nikita video, bright red, classy. And of course, the ultimate celebrity, Lady Penelope from Thunderbirds.
You called, m'lady?
Yes, Parker. Get to the Rolls-Royce. We are going for a little drive.
I love the idea of Lady Penelope's car being such a bonkers type of car. But I don't think I'd have it in pink.
Yes, Lady Pen's pimped-out roller had 6 wheels, rather than the standard 4, plus some pretty special gadgets. And if it was good enough for Thunderbird's royalty...
It's a Rolls Royce, man. I don't think you can get better. Listen, the Queen rolls in Rolls Royces. That's the point right there.
Surely then, there's nothing flashier than driving the same brand as the Queen of England. Perhaps that's why a ride in one can be so memorable.
The first Rolls Royce I ever sat in used to belong to Doug Ellis. Well, it still belongs to Doug Ellis, actually. Famously, his number plate is Aston Villa 1. And in those days, he used to drive around and come to the park when we were playing in the parks, and he used to take us for trials. And I remember sitting in his car in his Rolls Royce going, and going, oh no, it's a Rolls Royce, got to do it quietly.
They were so quiet that people didn't hear them coming up, and as a kid it was like, wow, this thing's amazing. It's like, you can hear that car, but you can't hear a Rolls Royce.
It's a very smooth ride. It feels as though we're hardly moving.
It's so smooth, you don't even, you don't even hear it.
But don't think that the Rolls-Royce story has been as smooth as a ride in a silver shadow. In 1971, the company's future was in serious doubt. Enter the Corniche.
The interesting thing is the Corniche nearly didn't get made, and nearly Rolls-Royce went bankrupt. They nearly closed the doors, but the liquidator of Rolls-Royce was really, really clever, because he saw this Corniche, which was being launched in 1971 in the south of France, and they had no money to launch it. And he said, that actually looks like it's got a lot of potential. So they let the launch go ahead, they financed the launch, and had that not taken place, the factory would have closed and there would be no Rolls-Royce anymore. And the Corniche convertible was the car that saved Rolls-Royce. What possessed them to make a two-door, four-seater, large, flying sunbed that cost the price of a sensible house in Surrey? Who would possibly want that car? But the world just loved it.
But only the super rich could afford it. Men like billionaire arms dealer Adnan Khashoggi, who bought one for his wife. He's since sold it on, mind.
I've still got Khashoggi's black Corniche. I'm driving it along and I'm kind of thinking, this was owned by one of the richest men in the world. And I've got his car. And it's great.
So, these are flash cars for the famous and the wealthy. But not everyone treats them with total respect.
I had a very odd relationship with Rolls-Royces, because, I mean, I would never, ever be in a position, really, to want or own one, but my mate Justin inherited one. And we used to go to raves in the early 90s in his blue roller, which was absolutely fantastic fun. Maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 of us in it. You had a little cocktail bar in the back. Little shelves to come down, you can have yourselves a drink, and you go, oh, absolutely, they're nuts. It's just like turning convention on its head, isn't it? You expect some, oh, Lord, oh, hello, nice to see you, and then it'll rain, ah!
Yes, you might be surprised at what some people get up to in a stately Rolls-Royce.
When it comes to drift cars, the concept of a drift car is to slide through a series of corners. So what do? We took a Rolls Royce, 2 ton plus or whatever it is, and we decided it's one of the hardest cars in the world to make drift. So let's do it. I love a challenge. To my amazement, it worked. Sometimes, you can get it real wrong when you build cars or customize cars, but no, we got it right, and it's well received around the world.
Guys, give it up once again for Mr.
Yet the Rolls-Royce name will always retain its mystique. It shows that when Britain does do flash, it does it with class.
If I wanted to waste my money on a car that does 8 miles to the gallon or less, and which would be incredibly eye-wateringly expensive to maintain, I can't think of a better car to buy than an old Rolls-Royce. You're going to get a beautiful, handmade car, the like of which no one else has ever made.
Face it, at the end of the day, you throw your keys on the bar, in a pub somewhere, and it's a Rolls-Royce. You're driving a Rolls-Royce. That's big in the game.
The British motor industry has certainly produced an incredible range of beautiful vehicles, with style, with speed, with opulence, and even on a budget. So is there such a thing as the quintessential British flash car, an ultimate dream motor? Well, it's almost impossible to say, but if we had to choose, perhaps the flashiest car Britain has ever made was pink, with machine guns.
successfully completed. On my way home.
Next time. They may have been humble, but no one forgets their first car.
It's like a rite of passage.
The motors that gave us our first taste of the open road.
Your first car is important. It's just a shame mine was so shit.
Language, Matthew. Well, the Cars That Made Britain Great continues next week. But the big Friday night driving continues next. And as staycations become more popular, Brits are taking their homes out on the road. Carry On Caravanning is a new series starting in a sec.